So I'm going to try to wrap this whole thing up. Unambitiously titled this, Getting Our Community to a Treatment. So I introduced myself earlier, just in case you were out of the room. My name is Scheeff. I'm IDefine's Chief Scientific Officer. I'm a scientist by training. I'm also the dad to Isaac, who is a child with Kleefstra Syndrome. And so I run our research program and get to work with all these amazing scientists. And we wanted today to give you kind of a sliver of all the stuff we got to talk about at the science session, which were longer presentations in more depth. So hopefully you got kind of an idea. If you feel like your head is overflowing, I feel the same way because I was over there and it was a lot. So I know how you feel. So what I want to get to is the notion, I think this Raja's talk really was a nice way to feed into what I want to get into, which is, do we want to get not just to therapies, but to targeted therapies? So that's the difference between, well, this is something that has worked for these symptoms versus this is something we're going to use because this person has KS. Those are different things. And there's a lot we all need to be doing for our kids, right? So a therapy is just one thing. All of the stuff we're doing already, which may be off-the-shelf medication, coordinated care, schooling, all that stuff, very important. Early intervention. But targeted treatment means a treatment where we understand the biology of KS and we have made a treatment to go after that specific biology. So a lot of people think that process of getting to a targeted treatment is you sit somewhere and you wait for science to come along and somebody will take this on and eventually it'll come and some company will make a treatment. That's not how this process works with a rare disease. We have to make it happen. We have to push the bus. It's up to us. And so I'm not going to get too deep into the science. I'm going to talk more about kind of what we can all do as a community to make this happen. So the patients are our why, but there's this gigantic system that creates ultimately treatments, and it requires all these areas to work together. So researchers, clinicians, government. So where we see IDefine and all of you helping is we're the gears in the middle. We make sure all these parts are talking to each other and working. We're the oil. Keeps the gears turning. And we do whatever we have to do to make sure this keeps moving. And the other groups like Angelman that are starting to get to the point where they're in trials and they're probably going to get an approval and they're going to have a treatment on the market. I mean, imagine that, a treatment on the market. You go to the doctor and they say, I've never seen one like you before, but you know what? There's a treatment. It's already out there. So that's where we want to be. And Terry Jo, when she was here earlier, showed this picture, and I'm going to show it again, which is her son, Lou. And I mentioned kind of where they are. It's a really exciting place to be, and that's what I want for us, is to get to where they are. So we're going to need a lot of partners. We're going to need a lot of partners. We need scientists. We're going to need companies. We're going to need people who believe in us in government. We need all those things. And they're going to ask, there are 10,000 rare diseases. Why should I work on yours? It's a fair question. We have to be able to answer that question. There's some really good answers. We will fund the work. We have good model systems. We have patient samples ready. We have the patients organized. We are clinical trial ready. And now we can add another one, which is we're already working on the leads. We've already gotten started. Another way to put this is we have our stuff together. I'm going to say it the nice way because this is a family event. But you know what I could say? That's what, when partners look at you, that's what they're asking. Do they have their stuff together? So we can be that group. Angelman has been that way for years. They are very professional. They have it very together, and they are getting things done. So I'll talk briefly about funding the work. We had this campaign called Turn Up the Volume. It was a huge success. Thank you to everybody who donated. Thank you everybody who got someone else to donate. Science is a profession. Scientists, as you heard from Maria, need to be paid to do their work. And it's a hard job, actually, she talked about. So if we can fund, the more work we can fund, the more we can get done. And so tomorrow I wanted to point out there's going to be some events around fundraising and how to think about that. So please pay attention in those presentations. Another one is we have good model systems available. I think we've covered this one today, so I'm going to go through this quickly, but the key thing is we have our own lines. We have our own cell lines that we control. We can give to anybody that needs them. So Dr. Chen has them, Dr. Almanar has them. There's 5 other groups that have them now. So we have control. And then we can do fancier things. I'm not going to go into organoids, perfectly explained already, so we'll skip that one. Patient samples. So this one is important. You guys heard from Simons. I hope you'll consider being a part of Simons. There's multiple places that have patient samples. I know it's a lot of work. I had a researcher I saw a researcher present something really interesting a while ago, and it was like right up our alley. She was modeling constipation, and she was using frogs, well, models, to do this. And she hadn't worked on KS, and I got in touch with her and I said, you should work on KS. This is like totally a problem for us, right? And she said, well, the way I chose what I was going to work on is I went to Simons and I looked at who had the best representation, and those were the syndromes I started on. And so I said, okay, message taken. We need to make sure we're in places like Simons and we have samples. So again, it's your decision if you want to participate. I hope, and if you feel like your kid can donate a blood sample. Now, these are very personal decisions and you should make them on a personal basis, but I hope you'll think about doing that. And then the other thing with Simons is that they will ask you to do surveys. We've already all agreed today surveys are, everybody gets fatigued, but this stuff really matters. Organized patients. So one of the things we want to know is how many of us are there? There's two ways you can find that out. One is modeling, one is counting people directly, where you have a hard count. Very different approaches, very different results. We think from modeling, short story is, you think about 10,000 in the US, it sounds like a lot, but remember, a lot of those people are not kids. Other people don't get genetic testing. So there's probably a lot of undiagnosed people, and then about 250,000 worldwide. So that's a lot of people, actually. And if you talk to a lot of drug developers, they would say that's a market. That's enough people for a market. That's economically tractable. Another thing that I want to always mention is Kleefstra syndrome is a rare disease, just a rare disease. I call all other kinds of things like, oh, it's super duper rare. No, it's not. It's just rare. Because when you say super duper rare, you say, don't work on this. Nobody has it. That's not true. 10,000 people in the US that have this, we expect. And then the way that but then you always get, well, how can you prove it, right? And so we can model that we think, and I don't have time to go into the modeling, but we can come up with a pretty strong model and say it's about 10,000. But when we direct count, right, there's all these problems I mentioned. And so what you get is, right now we're almost at 400 in the US. So we have a lot of missing people. And there's a lot of reasons for that, like underdiagnosis, et cetera. So takeaway is, spread the word on things like what Dr. Miller is doing, on these projects that Terry Jo talked about, like Project Find Out, because the only way we're going to find more patients is through more people getting genetic testing, including people at older ages. But we're doing a great job. We're on the right track. We have 1,100 patients in our map worldwide, which is great. And that is a kind of parity with a lot of the syndromes that are like us. You see similar numbers, so we're really on track. But if you're not on the map, please join the map and be counted. It's super fast. And the only time we ever message you, if you say it's okay, is we'll just send you opportunities. We never spam anything, and no junk. So, but the point is that we know the age of the person, where that person is, and that they can be contacted. That's really powerful, because when you talk to someone from a drug company and you say, I have almost 400 people in the US that I can email, that's a huge difference from, I think there's about 10,000. 400 is a hard number. They can work from that number. So if you're not on, please join. Super easy. Just Google Kleefstra Syndrome Worldwide Map. It'll come up instantly. It comes up super fast. Oh, there's QR codes. Okay, go to the QR code. And if you know somebody in the KS community who's not able to come and they're not on the map, please ask them to join the map. We already have this, so an ICD-10 code. We've had this for a while. This was a huge win. We got this from the CDC. You have to apply for it. In fact, they recently have put a moratorium. I want to go there, but on rare diseases getting codes. Yeah, I know, but we got in, so we're in. And what that means is we are now recognized in the American medical system as a disorder. And so it's important that you ask, and I've done this with my son. You go to the doctor and you say, please enter the code in that he has Kleefstra syndrome. And there's two reasons to do that. One, your child is then being tracked as having KS, so that's a win. The second one is the doctor is being educated. Because the next person that comes to the doctor says, oh, you're the second one I've seen. Okay, there's a code. I'll code that person. Now, if that person doesn't get on the map or doesn't raise their hand or doesn't want to reach out, and some people won't, that's their decision, and I totally respect that. Someday, if there's a clinical trial or there's something going on, the medical systems can query and say, we know all the patients we have, and we can contact them and let them know that there's an opportunity to join a trial, for example. So it's really important to use that code because it's for your benefit, but also to educate doctors. And every doctor that learns there's a code and then uses it, that's a win. And the Angelman folks modeled this and found that they had more people, once they had an ICD-10 code, they ended up with more people in the medical system than had jumped onto the map. So they proved that there are more people out there than who will raise their hand and go on the map. There's always people who are shy. Clinical trial ready. So we have to be ready to someday go to the FDA and say, we think we found improvement and therefore you should move this drug to go out. This is years down the road, but we need to work on it now. It takes a long time. So one of the things we're doing is this natural history study. And that's understanding natural history, in case you don't know the definition. It's how would something progress if you didn't do any intervention in the absence of treatment. And so we, of course, have, you assume you know about that, we have an action natural history study going on with 30 patients at Boston Children's Hospital. So that's what's called a prospective natural history study. Those patients will come in 3 times at approximately a year apart, take all the same assessments, get blood drawn, EEG, all these things. And so the idea is they'll build a profile of how those patients change over a 3-year period. And that's extremely powerful data. The FDA loves that kind of data, and that's the data you can use to build endpoints. But there's other functionalities out there now. One of them I'm going to highlight specifically is citizen health. So citizen health is what I would call more of a retrospective. So they pull all the medical records, and most of you probably saw their presentation this morning. So there's immediate benefits to using citizen because you can use their AI to help you manage your kids, hospital visits, et cetera. But if you consent, when you sign up for Citizen Health, your de-identified medical records can be put into the database, and then they can scan through all that data. And the scale is insane. We're already at 170. So I suspect we'll be at 200 soon. And that, although it's not quite as clean of data as you get from doing a conventional natural history study, the depth is substantial. And so you can learn things by putting that data together, those 2 data streams together. So think about joining Citizen Health. Again, it's a personal decision, but please consider it. And then the biggest one I want to highlight is that, we can now tell people, look, we're already working on potential treatment leads. So this has been the big change. And again, going back to fundraising, we did this Turn Up the Volume campaign, and a lot of the funds are responsible for a lot of these treatment programs that you're now hearing about from some of the scientists today. Real quick reminder, you've heard it already multiple times. So most people have 2 copies of EHMT1. In Kleefstra syndrome, 1 copy is not functioning properly. And everything we see in Kleefstra syndrome is because of that one thing. So there's 2 ways you can go after Kleefstra syndrome. So I'm just going to kind of introduce those high-level concepts, and you'll think about it, you'll see what you heard today kind of fits into one of these boxes. And one is go after EHMT1, try to get the level back up. And the other one is, okay, we are there, but let's try to deal with the knock-on effects, right? You've had this underdosing of this gene, and there's going to cause all these knock-on effects. And so we're going to work on both of those, and we're building, what's called a funnel, what biotechs call a funnel. And a funnel is you have a bunch of candidates in parallel going through this funnel, and the funnel gets narrower. And as it gets narrower, probably you're going to find a few of your candidates aren't the right thing. They're just not the right option for your condition. They don't work in mice, or maybe they don't work in organoids, or there's some other issue. But you have enough things going through the funnel in parallel that something is going to make it through, maybe a few things, hopefully. If it's a few things, that's going to be a great problem for us to have. And so you heard about the gene therapy program, which we're funding in Steve Gray's lab. He talked about that earlier today. And then you heard about an approach that Riley talked about, which is to make the copy of EHMT1 kind of turbocharge it, make it work harder. We didn't talk deeply about another project we're doing with Jeff Collar. Riley mentioned it briefly, but it's another approach to try to turn up. This is why we use the term turn up the volume on EHMT1. Make more protein, even though you just have 1 copy. And then the other one is these different approaches on the helping with the effects, dealing with the knock-on effects. And there you heard about our project that we've just launched with Unravel, and we've just gotten the data back from them on the first pass on that data, where with the potential there to, in an intelligent way, repurpose medications that already exist in KS. So all of these things will be going on. I think some things important to mention is, like I said, some things are not, I guarantee you we're going to come back here and we're going to say one or two or three of these things didn't work, or it was inconclusive, or we couldn't get the data that we needed to prove that there was something there. That doesn't mean it's a failure. This is how drugs get made. It's trial and error. And that's how every medicine you've ever encountered was trial and error. So every time you try, you learn something. And you also can often unlock things about the biology by doing these. You also can learn fundamental things about what's going on in chaos by trying medications and trying different approaches. So we're going to learn as we go. But I think the important thing is, a year ago, we didn't have four of these things in the funnel. So they're in the funnel now. They're just getting started. Like Steve said, it's early days. We're just getting started, but I'm optimistic. I'm excited about what's to come. So I just wanted to close with a quick checklist. There's going to be discussions of how to do fundraisers and finding ways to contribute to the effort tomorrow. So please, pay attention to those and attend. Keep answering the call. I know we ask you guys for a lot. We're going to keep asking you guys for a lot. What you need to know is that it's a pain in the butt and it makes a huge difference what you're doing. For example, again, the cell lines that we now have in control, there were two families that agreed to provide samples for those. And we couldn't have done, literally could not have done it without them. So consider signing up for Sign and Searchlight. I also want to highlight again Dr. Miller's opportunity to provide samples to him. Again, I mentioned it earlier, I'm going to mention it again. There is no other way for scientists to get samples other than for you to provide them. So it's a personal decision and there's no pressure, but I'll hope you think about providing those if you feel like your kid can do it. It makes a huge difference. And so, Dr. Miller is going to be in, say, is it Livermore? Yes. And then where's Simon Searchlight? Does anyone know the room? Right next door to Livermore. Okay. Okay. And so you can also go talk to them. Just say, like, I'm thinking about doing, I'm not sure what's it going to entail. So you saw Dr. Miller's thing is really pretty fast. He takes a little bit out of your shoulder and there you go. So, but every time we show up, every time we're part of another study, every time we're in the list of conditions that was in a paper that was considered, what that says to anybody else that's looking at us, it says, oh, those people have their stuff together. They're always there. They're always there. Like Angelman is always there. Like you can't get away from them. They're always there. And it's like, that's why they're getting somewhere. Join the map. That's super easy. And there's no pain involved unless you have carpal tunnel or something. And yeah, join. I want to really highlight Citizen, but also RareX is still going on and they're still sending you surveys. That also is really valuable. As Terry Jo said, we're working on how to help people share data around, right? They're trying to get everything hooked together so we can fill out fewer surveys. For the moment, we're going to have to sometimes fill out surveys that duplicate a little bit of work. And I don't like doing it either, but it's really important. Keep being amazing, because you guys are. And I think, I just want to close on where we go. I told you that we can model how many people there are. That model says there'll be 10 people upon chaos today, somewhere in the world. So, folks, we're the ones who can do something about it. A lot of those people don't have our advantages. They're in a place that doesn't have the wealth that we have in this country and the opportunities we have. So it's up to us to make this happen, and we can. So thank you so much.
And I just want to say a couple words. And Margot, I want you to stay up here as well, please, please. And Matt, Jeff, come up. So once again, some of you may not know me. I helped out a little bit on this effort. Jeff, please come on up. Matt, Mason, come on, guys. So first of all, my name is Andy Klump. My daughter, Natalia, is not here today, but she is 13 years old. My wife, Lindsay, is in the back with Angelica, my 15-year-old daughter. And we, as collectively as a board, all of us are board members and co-founders of IDefine. I have to tell you, I give the credit 100% to both Jeff and Eric for leading and really running IDefine. I play a very small role as a board member. These individuals also have played a very big role, but we are collectively just a very small part of this broader community. As Eric just summed up, all of us really need to work together to make this what we want to see as becoming, the preeminent Kleefstra syndrome community that can help drive towards treatment and a cure. And the scientists, clinicians, doctors, those you heard from today have been hard at work behind the scenes. You heard from them just a small snippet this afternoon of all the work that's going in the many countless hours and days, into the future. So we only get together once every couple of years, but I do give both Jeff and Eric the credit for really running and making the show and the trains run on time, because there's a lot of coordination.
Well, some of the times the train running.
And we all know we would like to have a cure tomorrow. We would like to go faster, but the reality is, in the rare disease space, it does take time, and it is extremely crucial that we listen to those folks who are at the cutting edge and help support them. But we are going to get tomorrow into the details about fundraising. And I can't tell you how excited and passionate I am about this cause, but our fundraising momentum is off the charts. We hit a record of $670,000 last year, and many of you contribute to that. So yes. But this year, we are on the pace to exceed 800 and possibly 800K or $1 million. And that $1 million threshold is a stretch, but it's something I want us all to push for. And it's extremely important that we mobilize and get to that $1 million a year trajectory. And so we have additional fundraising efforts that are looking 2 and 3 years out, where we want to get to 2 and 3 million. And if you all heard Ryan speak this morning, I don't know if Ryan has moved on, but once again, 18 years at Duchenne, at 3 years now running Angelman. I mean, these are organizations that are literally 10 or 20x where we are. Their U.S. patient population is 10, 15,000. I mean, that's where we're going towards. So this data that Eric gave right there, 10 children are born today somewhere on the planet with KS. We know there are thousands, if not tens of thousands in our community that don't know about IDefine, and they don't know about Kleefstra syndrome. And Kleefstra syndrome is far more widespread than we realize. So it is absolutely crucial that we come together, and each and every one of you has a part to play. And that's why I want to just highlight, I don't play much of a role myself, but I do want to give credit to where credit's due. And that is why, both, Eric and Jeff deserve a lot of kudos and attention. But I also do want to highlight our other board members and co-founders who were involved from the early days. So, Mason, do you want to say a couple things? Okay, all right. Mason's speaking tomorrow, and Margot and Matt will too. So, I know we're kind of in between you and happy hour and dinner, but I just want to make sure we gave a final round of applause to these two guys.
Yeah.
And do any of you guys have any questions about what Eric shared? Because there's a lot of info, and
I'm going to say if there's a question,
Yeah.
let's have it over at Basel.
okay.
Okay. But
Just real quick before we do that, I do want to call out something called the CRID that we haven't really touched on throughout the day, and we've talked a lot about surveys, and you just called out the duplication of surveys and the time investment. I would encourage everybody in the room to go to the crid.org. It's a clinical research ID that helps different programs connect on the back end. So Terry Jo featured the Matrix earlier. You have Simons, you have RareX. A lot of these folks have the same surveys, and to avoid duplicating that, if you get a CRID, they can connect with each other on the back end. And so it could save you a ton of time. So just want to highlight that. We're going to send out a recap email as well, because I know it's like drinking from a fire hose today and tomorrow. So just wanted to flag it, make sure it's embedded somewhere so that when you see it come across post-conference, you know where to go.
I wanted to also make one other suggestion, which is a lot of the scientists you heard from today are here. A lot of them are kind of scattered over on that side of the room, but they're everywhere as well. I hope you'll go meet them and get to know them. I was really happy to see that Dr. Barrero talked about how tough it can be sometimes to be a scientist. It is a job. It can be a really hard job. It can be a really a tough job emotionally at times. I think where you're like, what am I doing? And like, you know, you're in the lab, something's not working, and meeting people like you is an inspiration for them. So it's really important for them to meet you and really helpful to them. So I hope you'll reach out and meet them. So have a glass of wine with them. They drink just like we do.